The history problem is at the root of many of Asia's political problems. The history baggage weighs down all the major interstate relationships in Asia. It's not just Japan's relationship with China, Japan's relationship with South Korea, but also relationships like between India and China. That relationship is also weighed down by history because China occupied Tibet, removed a historical buffer between India and China, and then in 1962, China invaded India and fought a long border war. Or you take the Vietnam-China relationship. The Chinese military attacked Vietnam in 1979, and that war still weighs heavily in the minds of the Vietnamese. As far as Japan is concerned, it has to make it clear repeatedly that it has apologized for its wartime record, for the actions it took before 1945, that it stands by those expressions of remorse, and that it has done whatever was appropriate to apologize for its past conduct. But now it's time for all to move on and to look ahead. I think that is important even for the whole of Asia, other countries too, to ensure that history is not a barrier to shaping a better and more prosperous future. First, it's clear that for some countries, history is a very useful card to whip up nationalism at home, to bolster support for the country's political leadership, and to make Japan a scapegoat for that country's current problems. History is also a card for legitimizing rule of one party in a particular country, like let's say China. China is a one-party ruled state, and the Communist Party's ideology is no longer relevant today. Communism as an ideology has been replaced by nationalism by the Chinese Communist Party, and to make the party nationalistic in its orientation, it has been deliberately whipping up anti-Japanese sentiment at home by using the history card. Similarly, South Korea is too much anchored in the past. It is using the history card to make Japan express remorse again and again over historical issues. But this is again politics. Yes, Japan did commit atrocities in the past. Yet the fact is that you can't keep repeating the same issue again and again and make a bilateral relationship hostage to the history issue. If countries like India and Vietnam, for example, were to emulate China's example, they could demand again and again that China apologize for Chinese invasion of India and Vietnam. There will be no end to these historical squabbles and disputes. Therefore, it's very important for Asia as a whole to look beyond the past and look to the future. The partnership between Japan and India is Asia's transformative entente. It's a relationship that can transform Asia geopolitically, because there are three important powers in Asia: Japan, China, and India. If two of these powers to come together, like Japan and India, they can make quite a bit of difference to the overall situation and ensure peace and stability in Asia. So the Japan-India partnership can be a vital contributor to Asian peace and security. In this light, the two countries are rapidly expanding their cooperation and collaboration. This cooperation now extends from the economic area. Japan is India's largest investment partner. India is the biggest recipient of Japanese ODA. But the cooperation extends beyond the economic realm to the political and strategic fields. The safety of sea lanes and maritime security are prime concerns, and they need to cooperate more closely on these issues. In the coming years, we will see a lot more cooperation happening between Japan and India in the strategic realm. Already, they have agreed to a number of steps which indicate the relationship is rapidly growing. For example, both countries hold an annual summit meeting between their prime ministers. Prime Minister Abe is supposed to go to India in December this year for this annual summit meeting. And they also have this 2+2 meeting where the Indian and the Japanese defense and foreign ministers meet together. So the structure of discussion is already pretty rich, and in the coming years we will see these discussions translate into concrete strategic content in their relationship. The US-Japan alliance is the linchpin of Asian peace and security. For the United States, Japan is central to American strategy in Asia. In fact, Japan has been a model ally of the United States. It pays billions of dollars annually to the United States for the upkeep of American troops on Japanese territory. This relationship is becoming increasingly important because of Chinese revisionism. In other words, China refuses to respect existing territorial and maritime status quo. This partnership between the United States and Japan is also important for Indian security, for the security of Vietnam, for the security of Indonesia, for example, and for larger Asian peace and stability. So India very much hopes that the US-Japan partnership will remain robust. India too is building a rich, mutually beneficial partnership with the United States as well as with Japan. So what we are seeing in Asia is a constellation of partnerships between like-minded countries, and this web of partnerships between friendly countries creates a web of interlocking partnerships that contribute to each other. Friendly countries of the Indo-Pacific region can help create power equilibrium and stability in the larger Asia-Pacific region. I think it's very important for the United States to continue to maintain a robust relationship with Japan, while at the same time the US ought to be more sensitive to the concerns of local people, for example in Okinawa. Some of the bases in Okinawa that the United States maintains are bases that are located right in the center of the main island of Okinawa, and these bases are surrounded by densely populated civilian areas. For example, Futenma and Kadena bases are both air bases, and lots of warplanes land and take off, they refuel, and the people who live in the neighborhood complain of unbearable noise pollution. Even you and I, if we were living in the neighborhood of one of these air bases, would feel aggrieved by this constant activity of jets and refueling. And I think it's important to find a solution that protects the interest of the local people, that protects the environment, but also at the same time protects US and Japanese security interests. Japan has a very impressive record. It has not fired a single shot against an outside party since World War II. How many countries in the world have such a record? But for many decades, Japan has pursued a passive diplomacy. It's not been proactive, but a passive player on the world scene. And when some crisis happens somewhere, it writes a check. Japan likes to write a check to an outside party. For example, when the United States waged the Gulf War in the early 1990s, the Japanese government gave out billions of dollars for the US military campaign in the Gulf. That habit has not ended. For example, when Prime Minister Abe addressed the UN General Assembly recently, he announced more than $800 million in aid for refugees from Syria, and he also announced more than $700 million for water and other projects in Iraq. So the checkbook diplomacy continues, but there is increasing indication that Japan now wants to be a proactive player. A proactive Japan is essential for Asian peace and stability. If Japan remains passive, it cannot be a net contributor to Asian peace, but a proactive Japan can contribute to regional peace and stability and to international security. Therefore, it's very important for Japan, while remaining a pacifist power, Japan must become a proactive player in the Asian theater. Today, Japan is in a 21st century world facing new security threats and challenges. The dangers that Japan faces today did not exist when the current national security policies and laws were formulated and implemented. So the reforms that we are now beginning to see, we have only seen some early reforms. A lot more has to be done. These reforms do not change Japan's pacifist policies, do not make Japan a militaristic state, but they are important steps to make Japan more secure and more confident. So I think the public needs to be better educated, they need to be given the facts, they need to be told the rationale for such reforms. After all, the public has to be prepared for more national security reforms, because these are just early reforms. A lot more needs to be done. The Sasakawa Peace Foundation is playing a very important role in Japanese society and also in the region and globally. The areas that the foundation is currently focused on are all very important areas, issues that are central to the future of Asia and the world. So I'm very happy with the research agenda of the Sasakawa Peace Foundation. I think looking ahead, Sasakawa Peace Foundation can promote open debate in Japan on Japan's options in the security realm, in the economic realm, because Japan faces important economic and strategic challenges. What are Japan's credible options? What options are going to be effective? What options are going to be not so effective? There has to be a debate, a wider debate, and I think that in the coming years I will see a lot more debate happening in Japan, in part because of the great activities of the Sasakawa Peace Foundation.